it's pretty interesting. So, this is something that I wanted to get into as well before we jump into the other categories. TheRinger.com actually did a retrospective on Zelda 20 years after it came out. There's a 2018 article.
Okay.
It said, and the title of the article is Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time will always be the best game of all time. I know you. Yeah, I knew you'd wince when you said that. I mean, it's an opinion piece article, so I will.
I'm more open to accepting Super Metroid being the best game of all time before I accept this game as being the best game of all time.
Well, the argument
or Chrono
is that,
Trigger.
So here's a quote from the article: Ocarina of Time, despite being a muddy polygonal soup by 2018 standards, despite birthing sequels direct and indirect that better hit every other technical measure, despite that dumb goddamn owl, it is still the best game ever. It's the Jaws or the Chronic or the Sopranos of the medium. Everything older feels like it's from a different era. Everything newer feels indebted to it.
I don't think that's the... I'm willing to accept maybe it has the best legacy of all time.
Yeah.
Greatest influence, but I don't think that makes it the best game of all time.
I agree. I agree. Well, see, hang on. You touched on something really important that I do want to bring up too, is like to the influence that it has or the legacy that it leaves, where like even the co-founder of Rockstar, Dan Houser, he said in 2012, if you're making a 3D game and you're saying you didn't borrow from Zelda or Mario, then you're lying, right? Zelda was the first game to have Z targeting. I know it's not perfect, but it had Z targeting. It's the first game to have a day-night cycle where the world is affected by a day-night cycle. It has fast travel in the game, teleportation, which I think might be one of the earliest examples of that too. And I mean, there's just so many firsts that the game did that I think the argument that a lot of people have is that its influence and legacy as a piece of art or a product, because it influences other things, it makes it the best thing.
Is Jaws the best movie of all time?
No, it's not the best movie of all time, but it is the first summer blockbuster movie, right? So what it did was create the world where the others could exist, right? So it's like the Big Bang's the most important event of all time, in a sense, because it's the first. That's what I'm saying.
Most important is different from greatest.
Is it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just because something's influential doesn't mean it's a good thing.
But that's the argument that artists will make, that people make about mediums, because something being influential is the only true value that something can have, right? Any art form can have. Influence is the number one thing that an art does.
I disagree. I mean, I think obviously I agree that video games are an art form, but they're also an entertainment form. And if the game doesn't hold up today and isn't incredibly entertaining, is it still the greatest game of all time? Probably not.
Well, that's the thing is like, do you like Grand Theft Auto? Do you like Rockstar games? Do you like Red Dead? Do you like anything that's like open world or 3D that's basically indebted to Zelda Ocarina of Time?
I don't think, again, like you answered your own question earlier, is Jaws the best movie of all time with the direct analogy you used from The Ringer?
Well, I'm saying like it's this tricky thing where you have to think.
I will never not argue. And I mean, again, there's so many video games I haven't played, but just from playing Zelda, I am willing to accept the argument that this is the most influential game of all time.
Okay.
And most revolutionary for when it came out for its time.
No. That qualifier doesn't need to be put in though. It's the most revolutionary game of all time.
I'm willing to accept that.
Okay.
I don't think it's the greatest game of all time.
Okay.
For the reasons we've stated.
I think the argument that people make is that because something is the most influential, it makes it the greatest. And I think that that's a valid argument too. Because by the argument of something becoming dated over time, every single one of our video games that we're playing today will probably not feel good at some point. Because there's going to be different ways of playing games. There's going to be different peripherals. Who knows if Oxenfree will even be good in 50 years?
Sure.
You know what I mean? So by dating games or comparing mechanically how something might feel now than it did back then, it becomes a very slippery slope, like aging of art type of argument, right? And I think it's just, I'm not saying you're wrong or whatever. It's just another way of thinking about art, is that you have to think about its influence like its influence is also part of its value, is what I'm trying to say.
I guess I hear what you're saying.
I'm going beyond the game here. I'm going beyond the experience
cultural.
Of playing the game. Yeah, because I think
I am like I think we're just at we're at a fork,
Yeah,
an
yeah.
impasse with how we view greatest.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole nother argument, but
to be clear, this is not my favorite game
yeah,
of
yeah.
all time. Yeah. And I think that there's stuff that will eventually be seen as more influential than Ocarina of Time for me. But right now, this is like our current like kind of way of viewing. I guess it's our current like barometer and how we view things. Because like, think about this. Okay, I'll put this into context here. In 1995, Ocarina or Chrono Trigger came out. We played Chrono Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
3 years later, Ocarina of Time comes out. Right? First person, like you can view in first person. It's 3D. There's like day night sequence. There's like so many things that kind of push it forward. That is like one of the biggest leaps forward in gaming. Probably the biggest leap forward in gaming that we've ever had, because the jump from 2D to 3D was so massive, and it also had all these other game design elements that influence games today, that it's just a massive leap forward is what I'm trying to say. And I know that you agree with the massive leap forward thing, because that's more of an objective fact. But yeah, I know we are talking around in circles here.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it comes down to how you define greatest and how you choose to. Yeah, how you choose to define greatest. I'm choosing it by like
how it feels to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how it holds up.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at it through the lens of legacy and influence, which, hey, to each their own. I view them as separately, and you can also view them as the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that this could be a debate that I could keep yelling at you for ages about this.
To be clear though, and this is this is true for every art medium and every like product of art or whatever, is everything will eventually feel not good. Like every movie will eventually by another generation be seen as not a great movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like every piece of music and like play or like book, eventually those are seen as like not great by another generation. So it's, I guess, art is tied to the time that it came out and eventually becomes dated because things change, cultures change. And it sucks because like, I think that there's a lot of people that will play Ocarina of Time right now that played it back then, and they'll go, like me. Like, I wasn't like, oh, this is the shit. I wasn't like playing Ocarina of Time like, oh, this is great. This feels great. The Z targeting is amazing. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I was finding problems with the game, and I was disappointed that I found the problems, but it came out in 1998.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find these problems, but it's fine, because I can, rest assured that certain aspects of the game do feel really good. And we can dump into those now by moving on to our next category.